Your person took your photo to a psychic, and their love for you died the moment the psychic revealed that you are my beloved child. Your person walked into that psychic's room carrying one thing they believed could finally settle every question about you, your photo. They expected reassurance. Maybe confirmation that the feelings keeping them awake were real. Instead, the psychic stared at your picture for several long seconds, placed it carefully on the table, and said something that made your person's expression completely change. It wasn't what they expected. It wasn't even close. And strangely, the psychic refused to explain immediately. She simply asked, "How long have you been trying to convince yourself that this person doesn't matter to you?" Your person froze. Because nobody had told her that. Nobody knew how hard they had been fighting what they felt. Don't skip, because what happened next explains why their love seemed to disappear almost instantly, and why that disappearance may not mean what you think. The psychic turned your photograph around and asked your person to look at it again. This time, she told them not to focus on your face, your past, or anything they had heard about you. She wanted them to notice what happened inside themselves when they saw you. Your person tried to laugh it off, but their hands became still. Then came the sentence that changed the entire reading: "You didn't come here because you doubt this person. You came because you're afraid of what loving them will require from you." Suddenly, everything shifted. The unanswered messages. The emotional distance. The moments when your person almost moved closer, only to pull away again. The psychic was describing a pattern your person had never admitted aloud. Stay till the end, because she still hadn't revealed what she believed you actually were, and when she finally began explaining it, your person made a decision nobody in that room expected. Then the psychic leaned forward and revealed the detail that shattered your person's original reason for coming. She said your presence represented something they had spent years avoiding: honesty. Not perfection. Not some impossible fantasy. Honesty. She explained that being close to you seemed to force your person to confront feelings, choices, and unfinished truths they could normally ignore. And that was the moment something inside them appeared to switch off. Their excitement vanished. Their romantic certainty collapsed. For several minutes, they convinced themselves their love for you had died right there at that table. They even whispered, "Maybe this means I should walk away." But the psychic immediately shook her head. "No," she said quietly. "What disappeared wasn't your love." Your person looked up, confused. "Something huge is waiting for you," because the psychic then pointed directly at your photograph and revealed what had actually died inside your person, and why that realization could change everything they do next. What disappeared in that room was the illusion your person had been hiding behind. For so long, they had told themselves they could keep you at an emotional distance and still control what they felt. They believed silence would make the connection smaller. They believed time would eventually make you easier to forget. But the psychic looked at your photograph and said, "This person isn't creating your confusion. They're revealing what was already inside you." Your person went completely quiet. That sentence landed differently because it explained something they had never understood: why thinking about you could bring comfort one moment and uncertainty the next. Their feelings hadn't suddenly died. Their ability to pretend those feelings were meaningless had. Don't skip, because the psychic was about to reveal something about you that your person had secretly feared hearing from anyone. She asked your person one unexpected question. What happens when you imagine this person truly moving forward without you? Your person tried to answer casually, but they couldn't. Their expression changed before any words came out. The psychic noticed immediately. She pushed your photograph toward them and explained that genuine indifference doesn't create that kind of reaction. Then she revealed what she believed you represented in their life, a mirror. Someone whose presence made them see the difference between what they claimed to want and what their heart kept returning to. That frightened your person more than losing the fantasy of love, because suddenly they could no longer blame timing, circumstances, or uncertainty. Stay till the end. The reading was becoming painfully clear, but there was still one question your person desperately needed answered. If these feelings were real, why had everything between you become so complicated? The psychic didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked your person to remember the exact moment they first began pulling away from you. After several seconds, something clicked. It wasn't when their feelings became weaker. It was when those feelings became stronger than they expected. Your person remembered a conversation, a look, perhaps one simple moment when they realized you mattered enough to change their plans for the future. That was when fear quietly entered the picture. The psychic finally said, "You weren't running from this person. You were running from the version of yourself that would have to become honest if you chose them." Your person stared at your photo again, but now differently. Something huge was waiting for them, because just before the reading ended, the psychic noticed one final detail in your photograph, leaned closer, and whispered, "There's something about this person you still don't know." That final observation changed the atmosphere instantly. The psychic didn't describe some dramatic secret from your past. Instead, she pointed out something your person had completely misunderstood about you: your silence was never emptiness. She believed you had been holding back far more emotion than your person realized, not because you didn't care, but because you had stopped wanting to prove your worth to someone who remained uncertain. Your person's eyes returned to the photograph. Suddenly, memories began connecting. The times you could have chased them but didn't. The moments you stayed composed when they expected questions. The subtle distance that appeared after they pulled away one too many times. Don't skip, because your person suddenly realized they may have mistaken your self-respect for a lack of feeling, and that realization created a completely new fear. The psychic then asked, "What if this person isn't waiting anymore?" Your person couldn't answer. Until that moment, some hidden part of them had assumed you would remain emotionally available whenever they finally figured themselves out. But now they imagined something different, you continuing your life, becoming happier, and no longer looking backward for answers they had refused to give. That possibility hit harder than anything else in the reading. Their supposed loss of love disappeared from the conversation entirely. Now there was urgency. Not desperation, but clarity. Your person began admitting things they had avoided saying aloud, that they checked for signs of you, remembered tiny details about conversations, and wondered whether certain opportunities to speak honestly had already passed. Stay till the end, because the psychic still had one uncomfortable question left, and your person's answer revealed exactly why they brought your photograph there in the first place. She looked directly at them and asked, did you really come here hoping I would tell you to forget this person? Your person hesitated. Then came the truth, yes. They had wanted permission to walk away. They wanted someone else to declare that what they felt for you wasn't worth confronting, because that would have been easier than making a real decision themselves. But the reading had done the opposite. It had stripped away every excuse they carried into that room. Your person picked up your photograph and held it for several seconds before quietly asking, "What am I supposed to do now?" The psychic's response was surprisingly simple: stop asking what you feel. You already know that. Ask what you're willing to do about it. Something huge is waiting for you, because your person then reached for their phone, and the first thing they opened revealed they had already been preparing something for you before they ever visited that psychic. The screen in their hand exposed something they had been hiding even from themselves. There was an unfinished message addressed to you, written days before the psychic reading. Your person had typed it, erased half of it, rewritten it, and then left it sitting there because sending it would have made everything real. The first few lines weren't dramatic. They were vulnerable. They admitted that distance had not brought the peace your person expected. In fact, the more they tried to disconnect, the more clearly they understood what your presence meant to them. The psychic didn't ask to read the message. She simply noticed your person staring at the screen and said, "You already knew before you walked through this door." That realization stunned them. Don't skip, because there was one particular sentence in that unfinished message they suddenly couldn't ignore. Your person scrolled down and found the words they had been too afraid to send. "I think I pushed you away because you mattered more than I was prepared for." For the first time, they saw their own behavior without excuses. The psychic had never destroyed their love for you. She had destroyed the story they used to protect themselves from it. And now your person faced an uncomfortable choice. They could leave that room, delete the message, and return to the familiar silence. Or they could finally become the person capable of giving you the honesty they had expected from you. Stay till the end, because just when it seemed obvious they would press send, your person stopped. Their thumb hovered over your name. Then they asked the psychic one final question: "What if I'm already too late?" The psychic's answer was nothing like the reassurance they wanted. She told them nobody could promise how you would respond, and that was precisely the point. Reaching out honestly wasn't supposed to be a strategy for controlling your reaction. It was supposed to be a decision to stop hiding. Your person looked at your photograph again, then at the unfinished message, and something shifted. They began editing it, not to make it more impressive, but to make it more truthful. They removed the excuses. They removed the vague language. They left only what they genuinely wanted you to know. Something huge is waiting for you, because before your person could send that message, the psychic suddenly remembered something they had said at the very beginning of the session. She reached toward your photograph, turned it over, and asked, "Wait, where did you get this particular picture?" Your person's answer made her stop completely. Your person hesitated before answering, because that photograph wasn't random at all. It was one they had quietly saved from a moment connected to you that they could never fully forget. They chose it because something about your expression had stayed in their mind long after everything between you became complicated. The psychic studied the picture again, then asked why, out of every image available, they had brought the one carrying the strongest memory. Your person had no convincing explanation. And that silence revealed more than words could. They hadn't come there trying to erase you. Deep down, they had brought the photograph that reminded them exactly why forgetting you had never worked. Don't skip, because the psychic then noticed the contradiction your person had been avoiding from the moment they entered that room. She placed the photograph beside the unfinished message on their phone and said, "Look at what you brought with you." One represented a memory they refused to release. The other represented words they desperately wanted to say. Yet your person had arrived claiming they wanted proof that their feelings were finished. Suddenly, the entire visit looked different. They had been searching for an outside answer to an inside truth. Your person lowered their eyes and admitted something surprising. Before coming there, they had imagined hearing that you were completely wrong for them. They thought such an answer would finally give them peace. But when the psychic's first words seemed to challenge their feelings, they didn't feel relieved. They felt empty. Stay till the end, because that emotional reaction gave the psychic the clearest answer of the entire session. She told your person that sometimes you discover what matters by noticing what you cannot celebrate losing. That landed hard. Your person finally understood why the idea of their love dying had shaken them instead of freeing them. They didn't actually want to stop caring. They wanted caring to stop feeling uncertain. And those were two completely different things. Your person looked down at the message again. This time, their hand wasn't trembling with indecision. They added one final sentence, something more direct than anything they had previously written to you. Then they took a breath and prepared to send it. But before they could, a notification appeared on the screen. Your person stared at it, suddenly speechless. Something huge is waiting for you, because the notification was connected to you, and its timing made your person wonder whether the silence between you had already begun changing. For several seconds, your person simply stared at that notification. It wasn't the dramatic message they had secretly imagined, but somehow it felt even more significant because it reminded them that your life was still moving while they sat there debating what to do. Your name on that screen instantly brought back everything the psychic had uncovered: the saved photograph, the unfinished message, the fear disguised as indifference. Your person suddenly understood that waiting for the perfect moment had become another excuse. There might never be a perfect moment. There was only the truth they had avoided and the choice sitting directly in front of them. Don't skip. Because instead of immediately opening the notification, your person did something unexpected. They locked the phone, placed it on the table, and asked the psychic whether honesty could still matter after so much silence. The psychic answered carefully. She couldn't promise what you would feel or what would happen next. But she told your person that honesty offered something certainty never could: a chance to stop building decisions around assumptions. That sentence changed their focus completely. Until now, your person had been obsessing over whether you still cared, whether you had moved on emotionally, whether you would understand their hesitation. Suddenly, they realized those questions had kept them safely inactive. They had spent so much time trying to predict your response that they never gave you anything real to respond to. Stay till the end, because your person finally unlocked the phone again. They opened the message they had written, read every sentence slowly, and removed one final line, the line that quietly placed responsibility for their distance on circumstances instead of themselves. Then they rewrote the ending with complete clarity. No games. No mysterious hints. No attempt to make you feel responsible for their emotions. They simply admitted that meeting you had affected them more deeply than they expected, and pulling away had been easier than acknowledging that truth. Your person read the message once more. This time, they didn't ask the psychic whether they should send it. They already knew that decision belonged to them. Their finger moved toward the screen, but then stopped when they noticed something inside your notification they had overlooked moments earlier. It contained a small detail connected to the exact memory behind the photograph sitting on the table. Your person looked from the phone to your picture, stunned by the coincidence. Something huge is waiting for you, because that tiny detail brought back one conversation between you that your person had never told the psychic about, and suddenly, they remembered the promise they made to you that day. That forgotten promise suddenly became the most important piece of the entire story. Long before the distance, before the unanswered questions, your person had told you that if something ever became difficult between you, they would choose honesty instead of disappearing behind silence. At the time, those words had seemed easy. But when their feelings became deeper and the possibility of losing you became real, they did exactly what they once promised they wouldn't do. They withdrew. Now, sitting beside your photograph, your person finally saw the contradiction clearly. The psychic didn't need to explain it. Your person whispered, almost to themselves, "I broke my own promise." And strangely, that realization didn't make them want to run again. It made them want to correct something while they still had the opportunity. Don't skip, because what they did next was the first decision of the entire session made without fear controlling it. Your person opened the unfinished message and deleted almost everything. Not because the words were false, but because they suddenly understood that paragraphs of explanation could become another hiding place. They started again with something simpler. They acknowledged the silence. They admitted they had been confused by the intensity of their own feelings. Most importantly, they didn't demand anything from you in return. The psychic watched quietly as your person finally stopped trying to create the perfect outcome. Then your person reached the sentence that mattered most. They wanted you to know that their distance had never meant you were insignificant. In fact, the opposite had been closer to the truth. Stay till the end, because after writing those words, your person didn't press send. Instead, they opened something else they had kept hidden on their phone, and what appeared there proved this struggle had been happening much longer than anyone realized. There was a private collection of memories connected to you. Nothing extravagant. Small things. A saved picture. A note about something you once said. A reminder connected to a conversation they didn't want to forget. Even your person seemed surprised by how much they had quietly preserved while telling themselves they were moving on. The psychic looked at them and asked one simple question: "Does this look like someone whose feelings disappeared today?" Your person finally smiled, but it wasn't happiness exactly. It was recognition. Their love hadn't died when the psychic revealed what you represented. What died was their ability to keep calling that love meaningless. Something huge is waiting for you, because your person finally pressed the screen, but instead of sending the message they had written, they chose a completely different way to reach you, one that would leave far less room for hiding. For the first time that day, your person chose something more personal than carefully arranged words. They opened your contact, stared at your name, and considered calling you directly. That possibility felt completely different from sending a message they could edit 20 times. A real conversation would leave nowhere to hide behind perfect sentences. Their voice could reveal hesitation. Their silence could reveal emotion. And your response could arrive immediately, without giving them hours to imagine every possible outcome. Their finger hovered over the call button while the psychic remained completely silent. This decision belonged to your person alone. Don't skip, because just before they touched the screen, they remembered why they had avoided hearing your voice for so long, and it had nothing to do with losing interest in you. They were afraid that one genuine conversation would undo all the emotional distance they had worked so hard to create. Your voice had always made things feel real. Your person could ignore a memory, distract themselves from a photograph, or leave a message unanswered. But a conversation demanded presence. Suddenly, the original mystery became clearer than ever. Their love hadn't died when the psychic spoke about you. Their old method of controlling that love had. The psychic had exposed the one truth your person desperately wanted to avoid: you mattered enough to make emotional detachment difficult. Stay till the end, because your person finally stopped looking for reassurance. They pressed the call button, and in the first few seconds of waiting, something happened that instantly changed their plan. Before the call could continue, your person ended it. Not because they had changed their mind, but because they realized they didn't want their first honest conversation with you to begin while someone else was sitting across the table. Whatever happened next needed to belong only to the two of you. They thanked the psychic, picked up your photograph, and walked toward the door with a completely different expression than the one they had entered with. Outside, they stood alone for a moment and looked at your contact again. This time, there was no psychic beside them. No one telling them what anything meant. Just a choice. Then they noticed something they had missed earlier. The notification connected to you carried a timestamp that matched almost exactly with the moment the psychic first turned over your photograph. Something huge is waiting for you, because your person suddenly wondered what you had been thinking at that very same moment, and their next move was no longer going to be another unfinished message. Outside that room, your person finally understood that the timing itself wasn't proof of anything mystical. It was simply powerful enough to make them stop postponing what they already knew. They looked at your name again, but this time they didn't search for another sign or another reason to wait. The psychic's words were still echoing in their mind: stop asking what you feel and decide what you're willing to do about it. Your person realized how many months could disappear while two people waited for certainty that might never arrive. So they made a quieter, braver decision. Instead of sending the polished confession they had rewritten repeatedly, they recorded a short voice message. Their first attempt lasted only a few seconds before they deleted it. The second sounded rehearsed, so they deleted that too. Don't skip, because on the third attempt, they finally said the one sentence they had avoided throughout this entire story. I never stopped caring about you. I just became afraid of how much I did. Your person went completely still after saying it. There were no elaborate explanations afterward. No attempt to predict your feelings. They simply acknowledged that their distance may have confused you and admitted that you deserved honesty instead of mixed signals. Then came the hardest part. They told you they weren't expecting an immediate answer. If you needed space, they would respect it. If your feelings had changed, they would respect that too. But they could no longer pretend their silence meant indifference. Stay till the end, because your person's finger hovered over the send button while every old instinct told them to save the recording, walk away, and reconsider tomorrow. For once, however, they recognized that instinct for what it was. The same fear that had brought your photograph into the psychic's room. Then they pressed send. No dramatic celebration followed. Your person simply stood there staring at the screen, realizing that the outcome was finally outside their control. And strangely, that brought a kind of relief. The biggest truth of the reading had never been that their love for you died. What died was the illusion that avoiding vulnerability could protect them forever. Your person had finally crossed the line between feeling something privately and taking responsibility for it openly. But seconds later, the status beneath that voice message changed. Your person's breath caught. They hadn't expected anything to happen so quickly. Something huge is waiting for you, because the message had been opened, and almost immediately afterward, 3 small dots appeared beneath your name, showing that a response was being written. Those 3 little dots disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. Your person stared at the screen, waiting. Then they returned. Disappeared again. Returned once more. That tiny movement told them something words couldn't. Whatever you were preparing to say wasn't easy. Suddenly, your person understood what they had placed on your shoulders. They had spent so long protecting themselves from uncertainty that they had forgotten you may have been carrying uncertainty too. For once, they didn't send another message to fill the silence. They didn't explain more. They simply waited and allowed you the same space they had always wanted for themselves. Don't skip, because when your response finally arrived, it wasn't the romantic declaration your person had secretly imagined. It was shorter, calmer, and somehow far more powerful. Your message contained one question: why now? Your person read those 2 words several times. There was no easy answer. Saying, "because I visited a psychic," would miss the real point. The psychic hadn't created their feelings. She had simply challenged the excuses surrounding them. So your person began typing, stopped, erased everything, and tried again. This time, they answered honestly. They told you that they had finally realized silence was becoming a decision of its own, and they didn't want their fear to make that decision anymore. They admitted they couldn't promise where the conversation would lead, but they could promise not to hide behind confusion. Stay till the end, because your response to that honesty surprised them. You didn't immediately forgive everything. You didn't rush toward some perfect reunion. Instead, you asked something your person should have been prepared for from the beginning. You asked, "If I let you back into this conversation, what will actually be different?" Your person froze. That question demanded more than emotion. It demanded evidence of change. Suddenly, the photograph in their hand meant something new. Taking your picture to a psychic had been easy compared with proving they could communicate differently afterward. Your person realized that saying they cared was only the beginning. So they didn't answer with another grand promise. They told you exactly what they were prepared to change. Consistency instead of disappearing, honesty instead of assumptions, and respect for whatever boundaries you needed. Then your person waited. Minutes passed before another message arrived. Something huge is waiting for you, because this time you didn't ask another question. You sent one simple sentence, and after reading it, your person immediately turned around and looked back toward the psychic's building. The sentence on your person's screen was simple: then show me, don't just tell me. They read it twice, and suddenly everything the psychic had said became practical instead of emotional. This was no longer about whether they loved you. It was about whether they could behave differently when fear returned. Your person looked back toward the building because they finally understood something almost ironic. They had entered that room hoping a stranger could give them certainty about you, but you were asking for something far more meaningful: consistency. No prediction could provide that. No reading could substitute for it. Your person slipped your photograph safely away and started walking, knowing that whatever happened next would depend on choices made after the emotional intensity faded. Don't skip, because before they reached their car, another message from you arrived. This one surprised them even more. You told them you weren't asking for perfection, and you weren't asking them to prove everything overnight. You simply needed their actions to stop contradicting their words. That sentence landed deeply because contradiction had defined so much of their behavior. They cared, then withdrew. They missed you, then stayed silent. They wanted closeness, then acted distant whenever closeness became possible. Your person finally saw how confusing that must have felt from your side. Stay till the end, because instead of defending themselves, they did something you probably hadn't expected. They acknowledged it. They told you plainly, "You're right. I made you guess too much." Then they added that if you were willing, they wanted to rebuild communication slowly rather than pretend one emotional conversation could repair everything immediately. For several minutes, there was no response. Your person expected anxiety to take over again, but something had changed. They weren't searching for hidden meanings in every second of silence anymore. They had said what was true, and now they were giving you room to decide what was true for you. Then your reply appeared: "Slowly is the only way I would consider it." Your person exhaled, almost smiling, because it wasn't a guaranteed ending. It was something more believable, a door that wasn't fully closed. But then another line appeared beneath it, and this one changed the mood completely: "There's something you need to know before we talk again." Your person stopped walking. Something huge is waiting for you, because suddenly they realized the psychic reading had uncovered only their side of the story, and you had been carrying a truth of your own. Your person stopped beside the car and read your sentence again. For the first time since leaving the psychic, the uncertainty felt different. It wasn't fear telling them to escape. It was the realization that while they had spent so much time analyzing their own emotions, you had been living an entire side of this story they knew almost nothing about. They started typing, "What is it?" Then they erased those words. Pushing you for an immediate explanation would repeat the same pattern, making everything happen on their timeline. So instead, they wrote, "Tell me when you're ready. I'll listen." That response looked almost too simple, yet it represented the exact change you had asked to see. Don't skip, because several minutes later, you finally began explaining what had happened during the period when your person believed you were simply becoming distant. You revealed that there had been a moment when you were prepared to speak openly about everything. You had waited for some indication that your person was emotionally present enough to hear it, but their behavior kept shifting. Every time you sensed closeness returning, another silence followed. Eventually, you stopped interpreting their distance as temporary confusion and started accepting it as their choice. That changed you. Not because your feelings vanished overnight, but because you realized you couldn't keep organizing your emotional life around someone else's uncertainty. Your person stared at the screen as each sentence arrived. Stay till the end, because one line affected them more than everything else. I didn't stop caring when I became quiet. I stopped chasing clarity from someone who wouldn't give it. Suddenly, your person understood exactly why the psychic had described you as someone who had stopped trying to prove your worth. But your truth didn't end there. You admitted that seeing their voice message had brought back emotions you thought you had finally placed somewhere quieter inside yourself. Still, you weren't willing to return to the old pattern just because they had experienced one powerful realization. Your person understood. This time, they didn't promise you the world. They simply said they were willing to let consistency speak over time. Then your next message appeared: there is one more reason I became distant, and you never knew about it. Your person's expression changed instantly. They thought they had finally understood the missing pieces, but apparently one remained. Something huge is waiting for you, because what you revealed next wasn't about the psychic, the photograph, or even their silence. It was about something your person had once said to you and completely forgotten. That forgotten sentence had stayed with you far longer than your person ever realized. During one of your earlier conversations, they had casually said they weren't ready for anything that could seriously change their life. To them, it had been an expression of uncertainty in one difficult moment. To you, it sounded like a boundary. So when their behavior later became distant, you connected the two. You assumed they were quietly showing you what they had already told you. Whatever existed between you could only go so far. Your person stared at your message with a completely different understanding of the past. They remembered saying those words, but they had never imagined how strongly you might have taken them. Don't skip, because instead of immediately explaining what they really meant, your person finally did something they rarely did before. They asked how those words had made you feel. Your answer was calm but revealing. You told them it made you stop trusting the moments when they seemed emotionally close, because you never knew whether closeness would be followed by another retreat. You had started protecting yourself before they even noticed the change. Suddenly, your person saw that both of you had been reacting to incomplete information. They interpreted your self-protection as fading interest. You interpreted their fear as a decision against you. And between those two assumptions, silence grew large enough to look like an ending. Stay till the end, because your person finally understood why taking your photograph to the psychic had felt so urgent. They weren't searching for proof that you were wrong for them. They were searching for an explanation for a distance they had helped create without realizing how deeply their words contributed to it. Then your person sent the most important response they had written all day. They didn't tell you that you misunderstood. They said, "I can see why you believed me." Then they explained that what frightened them back then wasn't you. It was the possibility that caring deeply would require them to become more emotionally open than they had ever been. For several minutes, you didn't answer. Your person waited without sending another word. Finally, your message appeared: that is the first time you've explained it without making me feel like I imagined everything." Your person closed their eyes. Something had shifted, quietly but unmistakably. Yet another message immediately followed: "There's still one thing I need before I can believe this is different. Something huge is waiting for you, because your person expected you to ask for another promise, but what you requested instead would test whether their transformation was real. What you asked for wasn't a promise, an apology, or another emotional confession. You asked for time. Not endless waiting. Not distance disguised as punishment. Just enough time to watch whether your person's new honesty remained when the intensity of this day was gone." That request caught them off guard because part of them wanted to fix everything immediately. But they finally understood that urgency had to respect trust. So instead of trying to convince you, your person replied, "Take the time you need. I'll let my actions answer what my words can't prove yet." Then they put their phone down. Don't skip, because that simple decision revealed whether the psychic reading had actually changed anything, or whether your person was still searching for control in a different form. Hours passed without another message from you. Normally, your person would have started overthinking every minute. They might have drafted another explanation or searched for some hidden meaning in your silence. This time, they did neither. They remembered what you had said, "Show me." So they began with something almost invisible, respecting the space you requested. And during that quiet, the psychic's original revelation finally became completely clear. You weren't someone who had somehow caused their love to disappear. You were someone who exposed the difference between loving a person and being emotionally prepared to love them well. That distinction had frightened them enough to mistake fear for fading feelings. Stay till the end, because later that evening, their phone finally lit up with your name again, and your message contained something they had not expected to receive so soon. You wrote, "I noticed you didn't push me for an answer." Your person stared at those words, realizing that the smallest change had already communicated more than another dramatic speech could have. Then another message appeared: "Maybe we can talk tomorrow. No promises. Just talk." Your person smiled, but they didn't turn that invitation into a fantasy about the future. They simply replied that tomorrow was fine and asked what time felt comfortable for you. That was when you sent one final detail that changed the entire meaning of the upcoming conversation: "There's something I never told you because I thought you had already chosen to walk away." Your person's smile disappeared. Something huge is waiting for you, because whatever you had kept hidden wasn't about resentment or blame. It was about a decision you nearly made months ago, a decision involving your person directly, before their silence changed everything.